Hello and welcome to Gaming Friday here on Off the Shelf Reviews. I'm Gary.
And I'm Geoff.
And as you can see, we are taking a look at Valiant Hearts The Great War, which came out in June 2014 by Ubisoft.
Going back 100 years.
So I'm already partially through the game, but right now I'm just going to start a new game just so we can have the opening cinematic, which of course is, important for every game.
Of course.
And of course it sets the tone and the mood for exactly what we are going to be experiencing. And I can tell you now, this is a World War I puzzle, adventure, action game, which is very story driven. And of course it's also very cartoony in its appearance.
Yeah.
And I can also say that it's mostly, pretty much damn historically accurate, as this game will do its absolute best to give you a history lesson at the same time as you play the game.
Cool.
So we're being introduced now to one of the protagonists of the game, Carl.
Yeah.
And he is a German, and he is living in France.
Yeah.
And of course war is about to break out, and so...
He's a strapping young German lad.
So he's now being given his marching orders to go to war.
Right. It's like, you don't get a choice in this.
Now, as you can see, all of this is done beautifully in cartoon form, in this animated form.
Yeah.
And it's all done without dialogue. This is all being told through, yes, a narration, but it's also being told brilliantly just through these images and just a few, a very melancholy, depressing sort of soundtrack.
Yeah.
The piano sort of doing its best to drum up the feeling of dread here as
a minimalist method of storytelling.
Absolutely, and it's really quite provocative, and it works really well. So now we have Emile, who's now also being told he needs to go and defend the French lines.
Okay.
While his son-in-law is obviously fighting against them.
Yeah.
And so now he has to come and tell his daughter that I'm going to war as well. And again, it's done with just a brilliant narration. I really enjoyed this introduction. It really,
Yeah.
because it has to be said, there are very few games that ever delve into World War One. I guess there was Call of Duty sort of originated there.
Yeah.
And
it did.
very quickly escalated into sort of sci-fi
Bonkersness.
silliness. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really had its roots here. So seamlessly, we've now gone straight into the game. And you can see this is sort of a platformer, sort of side-scrolling puzzle game.
Yep, so I mean, immediately straight away, looking at this game, you don't sort of think, oh yeah, Ubisoft, but of course Ubisoft is French, so they've perhaps got a little something
I have to say,
dear to their hearts in this, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like your typical Ubisoft fare at the moment.
no, well, I mean, you couldn't necessarily say this game is French. Obviously, what I like about it is that it features a Bulgarian, an American, a German, and French characters, and they are all kind of a little bit stereotypical.
Yeah.
They are kind of a little bit cartoonish in places.
I was going to say, it looks to me almost like an indie game. You've got a kind of minimalist art style where the graphics and the animations are, I suppose relatively simple. But because they've used a particular art style, it works type thing,
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's one of their smaller studios. So it's Ubisoft Montpellier is apparently the ones that made this. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. And so, I mean, as I said, despite having all of those sort of different races in the game, countries, nationalities in the game, it sort of pokes fun at them all. So it's kind of an equal balance.
Cool.
And so, as you're seeing here, the gameplay mechanics are relatively straightforward. You're going to be moving your character around. There's plenty of prompts on the screen to tell you what to do. There are a few different... What I like about the game is that there are a lot of different sort of gameplay types. There's sort of like little mini-games within each game. It's also very much a puzzle game. So there are huge sections where it'll be a case of turn this lever and then turn another lever and then hopefully do things in the right order.
Okay.
I've got to say that most of the puzzles are very straightforward. Granted, a couple of them have stumped me for a little while.
Yeah.
And the game does have an in-game hint system, which after
Right.
a certain amount of time it goes, hey, do you want us to tell you where that item is? hey, do you want us to tell you how to solve this puzzle, you retard? So
keep things moving, I guess.
But it does keep, because that's what you want to do. You want to keep the story moving. You want to hear the narrator come back in and tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
You want to see more interactions with these characters, which you really start to grow to like and get used to as the narrative continues, and the characters start forming these friendships, which feel really quite sweet.
Yeah. So you were saying that there's, I guess, the real sort of like, I mean, yes, it's got some sort of strange, I suppose that, yeah, to me there's a bit of a strange combination here of silly platformer, comic kind of layout and approach almost, you know, like I know the art style is not particularly like Marvel, but it's still that kind of like quite hand-drawn sort of look.
Yeah.
Combined with what you said was essentially a narrative which is based on real life, is that right?
This game is inspired by actual found letters and documented letters of the era from World War One.
Okay.
And so yeah, it is heavily inspired by real events and some of the stories that happened. And the game, as I'm going to illustrate now, as you can see, there's a collectible right here. Every time you pick up a collectible, you can sort of press the Y button and then get an in-depth sort of explanation of what this metal nib is. In 1914, biros did not exist yet, and at school, children learned to write with metal nibs.
Okay.
Or more often, and especially in the countryside, were whittled goose feathers. The sheer volume of war correspondence saw metal nibs become more widespread.
So you
So,
start
as
off
I
thinking,
said,
oh,
a history
hell.
lesson. So, hey, remember I said before, how about collectibles were worth something again?
Yeah.
Well, now you can have an entire history lesson on World War One whilst playing a game.
Get your history lesson.
So
I
you
was
can
gonna
sort of
say,
pass this game off as, you know, as an
Educational.
educational game.
It's a bit of a mishmash.
But the thing is,
I have
the
to say-
game will annoy the shit out of you, because with there being 100 collectibles and the game only really
100?
being about 100 collectibles, and but the thing is also, when you go to new locations, meet new things, or come across new items, even if
Yeah.
it's not a collectible, the game goes, hey, here's a history lesson. Hey, here's a history lesson. Have some more information about it.
I mean, that was very much me, like, thinking, oh yeah, it doesn't look like an Ubisoft game, and then collectibles come in, you're like, oh, for fuck's
The
sake.
master of collectibles.
This is where
Ubisoft.
you
Yeah.
come back to the fact that it is an Ubisoft game, and then you go, oh, left field. Yeah, it's actually something like interesting off the back of them. So maybe it's collectibles working. I don't know, but they can't help themselves, can they? They have to have collectibles in every single one of their games.
Absolutely. So
I wonder if it's like a CEO thing. A CEO's like, he just interjects and he's like, "Oh, we've got this great idea for a new game," and the CEO goes, "Has it got collectibles?" It's like, I don't want to know.
I don't think that's the case. I think it's the case that they make the game and they go, wow, people finished it in 4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So how about we add in 500 collectibles? Right, now let's see how long it takes them. 20 hours. Excellent. Our game lasts 20 hours, everyone. And it's like, it's bullshit. 'Cause it's just...
Lazy bastard.
And so many games do it. Collectibles just need to stop, or they really need to mean something, or they need to be upgrades, you know?
Okay.
Like, I meant, like, Dark Souls, for instance, doesn't have collectibles, but it has very well hidden items, which will, you know, which are worth finding.
And actually useful to
Oh,
you.
actually useful to you.
Alright, so it
so-
looks like we got a bit of a war going here
So
now.
actually, here's another sort of mini game where it's a case of avoid
Dodge
the
the-
dots on the floor. So, but it's different, you know. It's sort of you're using a different part of your brain. You've gone from sort of a platform puzzle that's multi-layered to then all of a sudden, right now I just need to
Right.
avoid the falling bits. But it's more about the
Hey,
cinematics. It's
okay.
about this is recreating
So your
essentially the
commander
French
just
march
died.
against the German lines.
Yeah.
And so you can feel it as all your friends beside you getting blown to shit.
Yeah.
You know, and you
all you give a shit is about is carrying a flag.
and all you've been told to do is lead the charge with this flag. You know, and you know that your son-in-law's on the other side. And so
Right.
it's but all it does is capture. It's very easy, I will say. Like I said, this game is universally sort of aimed for anyone
Right.
in terms of its difficulty,
Okay.
because you don't at the beginning choose, you know, easy, normal, hard. It's just what it is.
Suck my blood.
So despite it being very cartoony, it very well captures
Yeah.
the grittiness and ugliness of World War One.
Alright. So is he dead?
No, he's actually wounded in battle, but now captured by the Germans, and of course
And that's Carl.
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 Private Emile Chillon from the 150th.
But it's again, it's happening whilst I'm trying to talk about the game. Is that as soon as that narrator kicks in and the next story segment of the game starts,
Yeah.
you just want to watch.
Yeah.
It very much feels like a 6-hour movie or a 6-hour series.
Right.
That, but that because the puzzles are not too difficult and most of the game modes are relatively easy and adept to pick up and play, you just literally are watching the cartoon play out.
Okay.
We're given the history and backstory of these characters, which really makes you like them, and when they bond with each other, as I
Right.
said, that friendship it really works, despite the fact that the characters don't need to say that much to each other. It's just in their gestures, and often or not in the sounds that they make. They don't always talk in complete sentences. It's kind of sim talk in a way.
Yeah, okay.
So now you can see that we have changed character over
September 7th.
to Freddy now, who has a different tool set. Each character has their own tool set, whereas
Okay.
Emil sort of has a shovel and can dig through sort of underground sequences. Freddy here has the bolt cutters, so he can break
kinda
through
like
barbed wire.
the World War One equivalent of a sapper, is he? Throwing
Yeah.
bombs and stuff, and
So right now, as you can see, straight simple puzzle, a case of blow something up to make clear the obstacle, make the
Right.
path, progress forward.
oh, that's useful.
But what I do like is that each of these set pieces, there's always things going on in the background. There's always, you never forget the sort of position that you
Setting.
are in, the setting that you are in.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, would you say that it? Okay.
Yes, you can die repeatedly, and the game is very generous with its checkpoints.
Okay, so you didn't end up very far back there.
No.
That's interesting.
Now, thankfully, these machine gunners do take an incredibly long time to reload.
Some
Matter of fact,
TNT
that's
down the
probably-
bottom there. How do you get down there then?
That is actually where I need to go, but first I need to go and set some extra explosives up.
Wow.
So I'm
I'm
now
sure you
gonna
could-
grab a brick and I'm gonna distract that guard. Quickly run
Right.
down the ladder,
Okay.
down the other ladder.
Well, that's some poor defense there.
Yep, like I said, it's very, very
just-
straightforward, kind
yeah.
of like, oh, that goes there, find the item, done.
Straight up platform puzzling.
Yeah, but again, it's the set pieces, it's dramatic, it fits the narrative, and
Yeah.
there are, I don't know if we'll get to it in this video, but there was a sequence that sort of caught me off guard, and I kind of call it the Guitar Hero moment of the game,
Right.
and it's kind of driving sequences in the game
What?
where
Yeah.
okay, now
Oh, you got a kind of like the timed jumps or something, is it? Or
no, it's a case of you're driving down the road and you're being chased by planes and a zeppelin.
right.
And so what you need to do is kind of steer left and right, and so
Yeah.
you'll have things coming at you from the ground, which you'll need to on the road that you need to avoid, and obviously the gunfire. So your case of just swerving left and right as things sort of prompt up on the screen where you need to dodge left and right.
Okay.
It just kind of reminded me of Guitar Hero.
So who's this guy? Is this the American?
This is the American soldier Emil now. Yep.
Right. Okay.
And so now, as you can see, what I do like is that you can't see wrong button. You can see the sort of cutaway, the comic cutaway of oh
him
god, I'm
just
gonna get
about to
shot.
Start shooting you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
okay.
can sort of easily gauge how long he's going to take to reload his gun.
Yeah, that really does make it look comic book strip, doesn't it?
It does.
Like that. Yeah.
So now I'm just going to throw a couple of grenades up here. Maybe a couple more. And I think he might get away. Oh,
All right. So that was strange. So yeah, so far you haven't killed anybody yet, then.
no, and you don't fire a gun the entire time
Right.
in this game.
Right.
You're
okay.
sort of passing through. So when you get to the guard, like I said about how cartoony the German Baron is there,
Yeah.
sort of escaping in his Zeppelin. So as historically accurate as it is
It's a
and
strange.
also a bit of fun.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, there is definitely an unusual mismatch going on here, isn't it? It's like, kind of like, oh yeah, it's the war, but happy, happy, joy, joy. Like, it is quite light-hearted. So, I mean, as this narrative goes on, is there anything that really sort of gets you emotionally invested?
Well,
Or does
now,
it end up just
as
feel
I've
like
said,
a puzzler?
it is a puzzler, but as I've said, what you just want to finish the puzzles as quickly as possible so that you can get back to the story, because
Okay.
once you're on that path, the story is really gripping and kind of like, I mean, I don't want to go into spoilers, but not all the characters are going to make it.
Okay.
This is a war, and so
Yeah.
grim and horrible things do happen.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first part, it is this adventure. You get your team together. You're on, the puzzles are pretty straightforward to begin with, and everything's okay, or everything you're enjoying it, and then you get gut punched in a visceral, horrible way.
Okay.
And again, it really makes you care. And so I think this game is great in delivering its story through the cartoons and through this narration and through these cut sequences.
So do you think it's kind of doing... Is it engaging people who would otherwise be turned off from, sort of like the horrors of war, engaging them in a way to help them sort of really take a look back at that period of time and think about it in a new and interesting way? Or is it just kind of watering down the actual horrors of the war and making it something that's more palatable than it should be? Which way do you think it goes?
I think it I wouldn't say it waters it down, because there are sequences in the game where there are, when you go into the trenches and there are a ton of corpses, you use corpses as cover.
Right.
It gets that ugly. So, I mean, you could say it's sort of, it's kind of cartoonizing it, but what happens in the game, I would say is more of an adult nature. But it is, like I said, it's accessible universally.
Okay.
So in terms of its tone and thematics, it's not gonna give you sort of nightmares looking back at the trench warfare of World War One.
No, okay. So this is where we got some letters in here. And these are meant to be real letters, yeah?
Yes.
Or based on real letters?
Based on real letters, yeah. Well, I think some of the letters are actually hidden as some of the collectibles in the game.
Yeah. So,
Your grandson sends you kisses.
yeah, I mean, it's a strange combination for me. Like, I can't... So, what do who do you mainly get attached to? This Carl guy, is it?
No, it's mainly Emil is sort of, I would say, the main protagonist of the game. He's sort of the one whose son-in-law has to fight on the other side. He wants to get back to his daughter.
I noticed they sort of, when the intro sort of, it's focused very much on the personal story rather than the politics. It seemed to touch very, very fleetingly on the politics of the time.
Yeah, well, the game will continually remind you of the history, and what I do like about it is the story spans over the several years, like most of the war as well.
Okay.
So it's not just a quick.
Sort of flash back and forward, or just flash forward?
Well, throughout the game, it does occasionally flash back and forward over similar. You'll see sometimes the same event from different positions.
Yeah.
But mainly, you just end up becoming enraptured in everything that's going on around you. As the war is breaking out around you, and you are just a casual observer trying to. You're not so much concerned with what your country's doing, but so much concerned with the friendships and the characters that you've built throughout the course of the story.
So they've given you
now,
dog.
now you also get occasional control of the dog, or you have dog control, in which case you have to. You can go to black and white mode, and you can see invisible prompts that only the dog can see.
Okay. All
So
right.
now the dog has rescued Emil, and he'll become his new traveling companion.
Is it kind of like a Disney dog? Is it? It's sort of
It
like
is a bit of a lassie, can sort of pretty much do
dog who
everything.
thinks like a human.
Yeah, and of course you can pet the dog every so often.
Nice. Okay. So now you come out, and they're all nearly dead.
Well, pretty much everyone's dead, but I'm looking for Carl. He's been taken away by the evil Baron on his blimp.
Right, there we go. Of course he has.
So, and here was a little puzzle that stumped me for a little while, but of course, items that you're looking for are usually moving slightly in the environment, so you can see that it's wedged up in the tree there. And now I can tell the doggy to pick up the item, take it under a tight space where I can't reach, and give me the item. Good boy.
What is that?
It's a lever for here,
Of course
so
it is.
now I can get past. And of course the dog gets excited. He will also bark at items or bark at things you might have missed.
Right. You're still chained to your feet.
I'm
are
still, my
chained.
feet are still chained, so yeah. I'm still a slave. I'm still a prisoner.
See, I see. You got to put that on that side there.
So
that
quickly
it-
do that there, and then run up to here. Hit this platform. Oh, no. You can't. It's not just quick button press. It's a case of press the button, hold the button, and then move,
the
and
le-
then move the left stick. So it's
left
kind of
stick.
combination buttons at the same time.
Okay.
So right now, as you can see, I've got the prompts come up in the top right corner again, and you can only know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for the history lesson.
Way.
So of course, complete with actual imagery from the locations as well.
These
So
are,
as I've
these
said,
are black
it
and
is,
white photos which have been coloured in, aren't they? Yeah.
I guess so.
These are these coloured in photos that they've got. Okay, that's interesting. Right.
So it really does show you how miserable the trenches and the front lines
Yeah.
really are before you come back to the, well, I guess less colourful game as well. I do like the colour palette of the game. It's seems to be that the character you're playing is sort of dulled out slightly,
Yeah.
whereas all the other characters are sort of quite colourful. Obviously, characters when they're dead as well seem to turn grey. So now you can see Lemuel's special ability that he can shovel his way through the ground
With a spoon.
with a spoon, with his ladle. Now I can see it's right over there. You can see there's missiles stuck in the ground. I can tell it's insta-death, explosion time.
Okay.
So of course there are hidden items everywhere. So more.
Oh, look,
Let's
another
find out
collectible.
what the Valiant Stories contest memorabilia. Yeah, what? Yeah, thanks. So I mean, it's purely optional. You don't have to sit and read everything. There's not going to be a test afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See the dog's barking up there to let me know that there's a ladder that I've missed.
Alright. So
But-
it's not like a complex puzzle. It does want you to just
Oh.
keep going, doesn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Now you got to
So
throw
I
the
could throw the
at
bone up there
ladder.
and get the collectible, but really, I'm just going to use the bone to clear a path. I don't need the collectible, Ubisoft. I'm done. I'm cleansing myself of collectible gathering, whether it means something or not. Okay, so here's where you got to be careful. Or you'll
okay.
just
you
kind
can
of
direct yourself.
you can
around,
direct
can you?
yourself, yeah. But obviously, you know,
Only
once
sideways and down.
yeah, but once you can sort of go up as well. But obviously, if you go down and clear the path underneath you, you can't sort of float.
Okay. Yes, of course.
So all in all, I thoroughly recommend this game. I
Yeah.
think it costs around £11 or £12 on Xbox, PlayStation, and on Steam.
Yeah.
Which, for the sort of 6 to maybe 9 hours that you're going to get out of it, is, I would say, absolutely worth it.
Okay.
Just in terms of its story, and you know, dramatic suspense right there. I think
Yeah.
the story's really engaging, and I think it really carries the game through. I think once you start playing it, you won't want to stop. You want to experience the whole thing. You'll sort of know within 20 minutes whether you're going to be interested in seeing it through or not.
Okay.
I would also suggest that maybe wait for a sale. I know that this game has already was free on the PlayStation, on the Xbox, and what has been on Steam sale already.
Okay.
But I'm sure it will come back around again in the rotation,
Yeah.
and it's definitely worth having a look at. In terms of the replayability, I guess, you know, the game's doesn't have branching paths or multiple endings, but it's a case of whether you really just want to have another nostalgic trip back to the misery of World War One and enjoy the story.
Okay. So I mean, if you had a World War One itch that you wanted to scratch, would you go with this, or would you go with something that's a bit more like Call of Duty or?
You know what? Call of Duty is fine for putting you in the the first-person view mode.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really tell a story.
Mhm.
This game is telling a story. It has a story to tell, and the gameplay mechanics around it, it's pretty straightforward, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's actually enjoyable to play because it's not too complicated.
So you'd say everything in this game hinges on, it's as far as the story goes, everything hinges on the story, yeah?
Yes.
You wouldn't really go, oh, you should play this because it's a great puzzle game.
It's not the best puzzle game, as you can see. I mean, it's straight away, the puzzle was, you could tell what you needed to do by him holding up the hands as to what ones he needed, and you can look at the crates there, and you can see how much explosives are in each crate.
It's almost a kind of like the puzzles are incidental, kind of almost getting
So
in
long
the
as
way of the narrative.
Yes, yeah. So long as like I said, there are a couple of times where you will get stumped and you might not see the item you need.
Yeah.
Like on the previous level, there was the band playing, and in order to get them all to play, you had to talk to each one in the right sequential order.
Yeah.
That was it. And so it's trial and error. And it's not too complicated, but that's what makes it enjoyable, because again, you can then just get straight back to the story and just enjoy watching this cartoon play out in front of you.
Yes, I'm conflicted about this, Gary. I really am. I in many ways, I'm like, I mean, I know it's highly rated online and stuff, and I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, it's kind of, it is very much a bit like fucking Asterix and Obelix kind of type, like silly cartoon comic strip that's just happens to be animated, but then it's couched in this setting which is really fucking grim. I suppose that's the main thing, isn't it? If you're going to do a thing about World War One, it is unremorselessly grim, isn't it? So I suppose what they are trying to do is give you something that feels a bit nicer to play, I guess, or a bit more happy-go-lucky than just the sheer mud, shit, blood, and meat that was.
That's kind of the
World War
background
One.
for the game. But yeah, and so it is more enjoyable and more accessible, coming to sort of see the environment through these characters' eyes.
Yeah.
And it kind of has more of an emotional impact, because you can look back at World War One as a historical point of view, but you don't really know who the people were involved. You don't really know their stories. And so from the letters that the game's inspired by and the way that narrative works in this game, you kind of get a much better sense with it. Because there's very few games that deal with World War One, this is, I'm gonna have to say, is probably the best one, and I would easily recommend this over Call of Duty if you want to experience, World War One and actually enjoy the experience as well as be taught something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it's glorifying the experience in any kind of way.
No, because I mean, you can see all these corpses here, all dying, being gassed everywhere. And
Yeah,
how quickly? Let's have a look about the Battle of wherever and first gas attacks.
Chlorine gas, etc. But then there's just something about this. I mean, you can see loads of dead people. There's something about this just seems to take. I mean, I really enjoyed those moments where, like, for instance, the World War II Call of Duty when you had the Normandy landings.
Yeah.
And the way they did that, I felt that was very kind of impactful. It was very, like, Saving Private Ryan, like, oh my fucking god, this is, like, heavy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's a strange juxtaposition between the seriousness of the content and then the cartoony, light-hearted, silly dog barking. Kind of. Yeah, it's almost like if Disney did World War One.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but it is a strange combination. Do you think this is maybe targeted more towards a younger audience?
Well, like I said, it is targeted to a universal audience. So I think, you know, whether you're an older gamer like myself or an even older person, I think, you know, if you're looking for a casual game, you know, this is accessible because it's not too complicated. And yeah, if you're a younger gamer and you're sort of, you know, if you've played, you know, like your Monkey Islands and, you know, all of the classic sort of puzzle games, this game is a walk in the park.
Right,
You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not going to be difficult. It's not going to challenge you in any way. But what you will get is a very satisfying story. And so, you know, it's what you're after in the game, essentially, what you're looking for.
So yeah, you don't really play Telltale games for the gameplay. You play
It for the story.
For the story.
Absolutely.
So is it kind of, you just kind of think of it in that sort of vein then, I suppose? Would you?
Yeah, because and like any Telltale game, you know, the puzzles are talk to everybody in that location and, you know, mix some items together. It's very, very straightforward. And yeah, stop, go, stop.
It seems what seems strange to me is that it's I guess it's like they've thrown in some puzzler with a powerful narrative from World War One, but then they haven't committed to either. So it almost seems like a slightly bland version of either of those concepts put together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do own this. I confess, I do own this on Steam. As of yet, I haven't played it, but I did buy it very cheap in the sale. So, it's something that I don't know if I recommend this really. I mean, yeah, if you can get it cheap enough, you know, it's something to pass, like you say, like a few hours with, I guess.
I definitely I definitely recommend the game. I think it's it's a casual game. You can sort of take it easy and play it, you know, episodically as it's broken down into 4 chapters. Each chapter takes about an hour and a half, so you know you could break it down that way. But the engaging story, the characterization, the artwork, the music, the sound effects, I think the game's beautifully well crafted. It's expertly told, and I think people that don't play it are going to miss out on quite a rich experience. That's very moving and it's very touching and it's a very human story at the same time about family and friendship. So
I was going to say, if I had a kid, this is probably the sort of thing I'd be like, if they were learning about World War One, I'd be like, here, try this.
Yeah.
It's got those little bits of history lessons in it, but then it's got enough to keep them engaged and activated, and you're sort of smuggling a history lesson in with something that's quite fun and easy to hold their attention.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can see its place. It's not something that I would be like, oh yeah, this is a really interesting consideration of World War One. But if you wanted something a bit more light-hearted to introduce your kids to this the events of this sort of time, this would be a way to start it. And it doesn't go too heavy into the politics, but goes, like you say, a bit more into the personal stories and the lightly touches on the horrors of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's gonna wrap it up for us. I'm sorry, I'm completely engrossed in just playing the game once more. It's a fun game to play, and so yeah, I highly recommend it. That's gonna be it from us. So we'll be back next Friday with another video game. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Patreon. Film reviews on Thursdays. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Take it easy.